The blue lights don't move like anything natural. They just drift. They hover. They pulse. And every ranger I know has been told, don't follow them. I'd been a ranger here for 6 years. I knew that role by heart. But that night, something answered my radio before I keyed it. Welcome to Trailwatch Tales, where rangers share the stories they were never meant to tell. Before this story ends, tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight. Because what happened to me in the Everglades, it doesn't happen to just anyone. It happens to the ones who follow the lights when they call back. I followed them for 47 minutes, and I still can't account for 2 of them. This is what I found at the end, and this is why I almost didn't come back. My name's Marcus Webb. I was a patrol ranger at Everglades National Park for 6 years, 3 of them on the night rotation out of Flamingo Station. That's the southmost point of the park, the end of the road, literally. Past that dock, there's nothing but water and mangrove and 100 miles of nothing until you hit the Keys. Most nights it was quiet out there, but quiet in the Everglades isn't peaceful, it's watchful. The swamp doesn't go silent because nothing's there. It goes silent because something is, and everything else already knows it. The Seminole Rangers who trained me, the ones who'd worked this land for 20 years before I ever showed up, they had a specific word for what the Everglades does at night. They never translated it for me directly, but the closest they got was, it breathes back. I didn't understand that until the night of April 9th. April 9th started routine. I logged on at 11 p.m., checked out the patrol kayak, ran my first sweep of the Snake Bite Trail perimeter. That's the trail that runs out to Florida Bay on the eastern edge. Mangroves on both sides, no lighting, no signal, dead zone. My call sign was Flamingo 7. Dispatch was Flamingo Base, manned by a woman named Carla Rodriguez who'd been on night comms for 8 years. She was unflappable. I've heard her handle a tourist cardiac arrest and a Category 1 storm threat in the same night without raising her voice. So when I checked in at 1:52 a.m. and she came back with my standard confirmation, I noticed she held the channel open for an extra second before she released it. Just a second. But Carla never did that. It was a small thing, the kind of small thing you file away because your training tells you to trust your instincts, and your instincts are quietly screaming that something is wrong before your brain catches up. I almost keyed back to ask her what it was. I'm glad I didn't, because she would have had to tell me. I'd been briefed on the blue lights 3 times in 6 years. Every ranger at Flamingo gets the briefing. It's informal, not in any manual, not in any training document. It's passed person to person, like folklore. The senior ranger who trained me, a Miccosukee man named Thomas Osceola, pulled me aside on my 3rd week and told me straight. He said, "You will see lights over the water at night. They'll look like lanterns, but blue. They'll move with purpose. Do not approach. Do not speak to them. Do not call it in on the main channel. That's for their ears. Use the secondary channel, 16, and say only your call sign. Then wait." I asked him what they were. He looked at me for a long moment and said, "The elders call them Ishkatini's children. I call them what they are, a door. And some doors aren't meant to be opened from this side." At 2:07 a.m., I saw the first one. I was running my kayak sweep past the Christian Point Trail terminus. The trail ends at open water, nothing past it but Florida Bay. And there it was, maybe 60 meters out over the water. Cold blue-white, slightly larger than a softball, hovering at about shoulder height if you were standing on the surface. Moving west, southwest, maybe 2 miles per hour. Deliberate, like it knew where it was going. I cut my paddle and sat completely still. The water was glass. My kayak barely rocked. I watched it for 40 seconds, and the whole time I felt this pull. Not physical, not exactly, more like the way you feel standing at the edge of a cliff, that weird compulsion that has nothing to do with wanting to fall. Thomas had warned me about that too. He called it the invitation. He said, if you feel it pull, you say no out loud. It has to hear the no. It has to come from your mouth, not just your head. I didn't say no. I paddled toward it. I know how that sounds. I'm telling you my reasoning at the time because I need you to understand I wasn't being reckless. I was doing what every trained ranger does when they see something unexplained in their sector. You approach with caution and you document it. That's protocol. I told myself that. I paddled toward it with my flashlight off, maintaining distance, trying to identify a source, a boat light, a reflection, a gas seep. The Everglades does produce methane. It can combust. There are rational explanations. I got to 40 meters. It didn't move. I got to 25 meters. It didn't move. And then, at roughly 20 meters, my radio produced a sound I'd never heard before and have never been able to explain since. Not static, not a voice, a frequency. Low, like a bass note held perfectly steady. And the orb pulsed once, synchronized with it, brighter for just a moment. And I stopped paddling. Not because I decided to, because my hands wouldn't move. I don't know how long I drifted. My watch says it was 4 minutes between the moment I stopped paddling and the moment the light winked out. 4 minutes doesn't sound like much, but I have no memory of those 4 minutes. Not gaps, not fragments, nothing. I was 20 meters away from that light, my hands locked on the paddle, and then I was at the bank of the Christian Point Trail terminus, my kayak grounded in the mud, standing in 6 inches of water. No memory of getting there. No memory of getting out of the kayak. My flashlight was on. I don't remember turning it on. My radio log shows I transmitted on channel 16 at 2:23 a.m., my call sign only. I don't remember doing that either. And the mud around my kayak showed only my boot prints going from the hull to the bank. No other prints. But something had walked up beside my kayak and rested one hand, or something shaped like a hand, on the bow. The impression was still there in the mud. I measured it later. 11 inches long, 4 fingers. I documented the print. Photographs, measurements, written log. I pulled the kayak up out of the water, sat on a trail marker post, and ate the granola bar from my vest pocket. I know that sounds absurd, but that's what training does. You eat when you can. You stay regulated. My hands had stopped shaking by the time I finished it. I keyed channel 16 and gave my call sign. Nothing came back. I tried again at 2:40 a.m. Nothing. But channel 4, the main channel, the one Thomas told me never to use if I'd seen the lights, channel 4 opened on its own at 2:41 a.m. Just carrier tone. No voice. It held open for 30 seconds and then dropped. I remember thinking, this is the part of the story where the ranger does the stupid thing. I remember thinking that very clearly. And then I turned around and started walking the Christian Point Trail back toward the park. And I was about half a mile in when I realized the trail was going the wrong direction. The trail runs east to west. I was heading north, into the interior, deeper in. I had been walking north for 22 minutes before I realized I didn't remember deciding to turn. They were waiting at the edge of a clearing I couldn't find on any map. 3 of them. The lights, but not moving the way lights move, stationary, arranged in a triangle, hovering at exactly the same height. And between them, in the center of the triangle, was a man. I say man. He was standing upright. He was wearing what looked like standard Park Service clothes. But he was facing away from me, and he was standing in the center of a triangle of blue lights at 3:04 a.m. in a clearing that shouldn't exist, and he was absolutely still. I called out, standard protocol, Flamingo 7, identify yourself. He didn't move. I took 3 steps forward, and then 2 things happened simultaneously. The lights went out, all 3, instantly, and the man turned around. I've tried to describe what I saw for 2 years. The shape was right, the proportions were right, but the face, there was no face. Not obscured, not hidden, not shadowed. There was simply no face. And it raised one hand, 4 fingers, and it pointed directly at my radio. I ran. I'm not ashamed of that. I turned and I ran, and I didn't stop until I hit the main boardwalk at Ahinga Trail, and that's 2 miles from Christian Point. I covered it in just under 9 minutes. I know because my radio log shows my emergency call at 3:13 a.m. Carla answered on the first key. Her voice was completely steady. She said, "Flamingo 7, copy your position. Stay on the trail. Do not go back into the interior. Ranger Osceola is en route." She didn't ask me what I'd seen. She already knew. Thomas reached me at 3:31 a.m. He sat with me on the boardwalk railing for a long time without saying anything. Finally, he asked me one question. Did it speak? I told him no. He nodded slowly and said, "Then you're all right. They only take the ones they've spoken to." I asked him how many that was. He looked out at the water for a while. Then he said, "In my years here, 11. We never found any of them. Not one." I filed my incident report that morning. It took me 3 attempts to finish it because I kept stopping at the same detail. The detail I still haven't been able to explain. The detail I couldn't explain was this. My radio log showed a transmission on channel 16 at 2:23 a.m. My call sign only. I confirmed that. But the transmission log showed a response, 7 seconds long, also on channel 16. The metadata listed the responding unit's call sign as Flamingo 7. My call sign. I was the only unit in the field. Carla hadn't keyed. Thomas hadn't keyed. The response had come from my own call sign, and it wasn't my voice on the recording. I've listened to it. It's close. It has my cadence, my pitch, but it isn't me. And it says 3 words I would never have said because they have no meaning in any context I understand. 3 words I've had translated by 3 different Miccosukee elders, and each one of them went quiet for a very long time afterward, and none of them would tell me what it meant. I transferred out of Flamingo Station in June of that year, not because I was asked to, because Thomas looked at me one morning and said quietly that the park had noticed me now, and noticed wasn't the same as chosen, but it was the step before it. I didn't ask what the step after was. I have a daughter. She's 7. She likes to draw, and she hates thunderstorms, and every single night I make sure I'm home before dark. Not because I'm afraid of the dark, because I know now what lives in the spaces between the lights. I still have the recording. I've never played it for anyone. Some nights I take my phone out and look at the file. I haven't deleted it. I don't know why. I think maybe some part of me is still waiting to understand the 3 words. And some other part of me, the part that ran through 2 miles of Everglades in 9 minutes, knows that understanding them is exactly what they're waiting for.